Hey guys, haven't done a video on this channel in a while and thought I'd do a little bit something different, but not entirely out of character. Today we're going to be taking a look at the AWS Strike Vest, and this is going to be purely a review and not a historical video. I'd love to do a historical video on this vest, but it's quite a lengthy topic, and I'd much rather do it to where I can have all the information that I need to provide to really give you a full picture of the complex history of these vests. But I'll try and condense it for you for the sake of this video. So, from what we know about the strike vest is that they were designed by several members of the U.S. Army's 1st Special Operational Detachment Delta, or Delta Force, as I'm going to refer to them throughout the remainder of this video. And it was basically a situation where several unit operators would give feedback on what they wanted in a particular piece of gear, and that eventually culminated in more or less this design. The original ones were quite a bit different. They were initially made out of a sort of nutria brown fabric and had olive drab webbing, and there was quite a bit of variation to these early strike vests because these, contrary to popular belief, at least as far as I've been able to research and get feedback from former operators, these were never designed by AWS. These were designed by Delta operators giving feedback to unit sew shops and rigger shops so they could make them out of materials they had on hand. And eventually they developed to a point where whenever AWS, which at that point was called Arnold's Welding Service and not Advanced Warfighting Solutions as they are today, they eventually picked up the design and began to manufacture them commercially. On their website it says they were made in 1982. I do not believe this is correct. In 1982 we do not see Delta using strike vests. We see them using modified survival vests and things of that nature, a lot of Alice gear. The closest that I can pinpoint to when these vests were introduced was probably around 1987 at the earliest, maybe even 1985. I'm not sure, but definitely not 1982 as AWS currently implies. But nevertheless, these vests persisted within the unit for quite some time. These can be seen used as late as 2005, but may have been used even later, but I've just not seen any reference of it. As far as other nations using these, the only other one that comes to mind is the United Kingdom. Some members of the UKSF picked these up, but very, very few examples circulated outside of the US. And as far as I know, primarily Delta Force was the unit that used these, and not really anyone else. Forgive any background noise here, doing this outside for the first time. So let's talk about the overview of the vest, what we have working for us, and why it's such a influential design even today. So what we have here is just a pretty typical basic rectangular base, about 23 by 7 inches if I recall correctly, and you have a series of 6 pouches. You have 2 pouches on the side which are large enough to fit a variety of different radios, which I'll get to in a moment. They can also fit flex cuffs and small individual items like maybe a small first aid kit, things of that nature. I've even seen some references of Delta guys stuffing entire 1911s in one of these pouches, so you could pretty much use them for just about anything you wanted to use in there. Your mileage may vary. Next to those, you just have 2 basic M16/M4 magazine pouches, which AWS claims can also fit 2 MP5 magazines. So in total, this vest would hold about 4 M16/M4 mags or 8 MP5 mags. I do not have any MP5 mags to test, so you'll just have to take my word for it and AWS's. The 2 center pouches also have each 2 magazine pouches, pistol magazine pouches, which as far as I'm aware can only fit single stack mags. I've not tried to shove a double stack like a Glock mag inside of these at all. What you see is what you get. But nevertheless, that's pretty much what we're working with, and I'll start to break down some of the finer features about it. So the material of the vest is 1000 denier Cordura, very durable material. Don't see this ripping or tearing anytime soon. Maybe around some of the wear points, like where the pistol mags sort of protrude through, but other than that, very, very durable material, very good quality craftsmanship. On the radio pouches, this is where we're going to start getting critical about here. So originally, when these vests were made by unit riggers, they were sized for the Motorola MX300R, I believe, and they were a little bit longer than this, and they were a little bit tighter. And nowadays, as you can see, if you put a standard embedder size radio inside one of these things, it's kind of loose and floppy, and Another thing I noticed, which I think was consistent on the original strike vests as well, like the pre-AWS ones made by riggers, is that the retention strap here to hold them in is entirely way too long. As you can see, it overpasses the Velcro entirely. So that's a little bit unfortunate, but I think this was done with the intention that you can just shorten it at will. I see a lot of original examples where unit guys have tied knots in the webbing to shorten it, so that is something you can do at your own discretion if you wanted to. Moving on to the magazine pouch here, the outer magazine pouches, these also have a retention strap, which isn't too long. I mean, it's still kind of oversized for what it needs to be. This may have also been done intentionally so you could fasten them loosely so you can pull it out of the way and then pull your mag out and up. And then you can see it also has a bit of mil-spec 1-inch elastic here for additional retention. So that's also helpful if the strap doesn't suit your fancy. On the center pouches here, you can see that there is no retention for the magazine here. I'm not sure why exactly they did this. I've not seen any custom variations of these strike vests where these center pouches had any form of secure retention for this magazine, but nevertheless, that is the design that persisted. And when you have two pistol mags in here, it's actually pretty tight. Like, it's almost comparable to like a Kydex insert. I don't want to go that far, but if you really wanted to, I suppose you could add some sort of Velcro flap and maybe integrate it with the pistol mag Velcro, although it probably wouldn't work all that well. But really, I think the reason they did this is because these two mags are going to be the ones you're probably going to reach for the most. They're right up front where you can see them and be able to tell when they're falling out versus not. So I don't really see them falling out anytime soon. I can go ahead and test it, so I haven't actually done this. So if these do fall out, I guess that'll be something to see. But shaking it upside down, you can see that the magazines are actually held in there pretty nicely. So if you're running around and doing all sorts of operator shit, these aren't going to fall out on you. At least not until the elastic wears out, in which case you could probably replace it. It wouldn't be too hard to take it to a sew shop and get a guy to repair it, but it is what it is. Not really anything to say much about the pistol mags other than the flaps themselves, which is made out of a 17337 webbing. These could do with being a little bit longer, and on the original strike vests, these two strips of Velcro were a little bit closer in. I'm not sure why they spaced them this far out. I'm just not sure. There's nothing else I can say on that. Is that they could be spaced a little bit closer inwards, maybe about an inch apart instead of like an inch and a half like they are here. And these could do with being a little bit longer. I can understand why they made them shorter. It's easier to open them up as opposed to the older ones, which were longer, and you'd have to, more Velcro to peel. But it is what it is. It works fine. Doesn't really matter, I suppose, in the long run. And that's really it for the pouches, I suppose. Moving on to the web straps here, which again are made out of 17337 webbing. Originally, these would have been made out of 5038 Type 4 webbing, which I actually prefer. It's a lot lighter weight, it's a lot smoother, but it's a little bit less durable than the 17337. But as you can see, these have two YKK 1-inch side release buckles here, which you can unclip. And unfortunately, these are not Swift clip compatible. So if you wanted to, you could probably jury rig it into a Swift clip system. But as you can see, the buckles are reversed. It would really need to be the male side attached to the vest if you wanted to even attempt to Swift clip these. But I suppose what you could do is maybe cut the buckles off and then put some field repair buckles on there, and maybe it would work okay, maybe it wouldn't. But you would need to overhaul it a little bit if you wanted to Swift clip mount this. And then, like I said, the shoulder pads are 2-inch webbing. Originally, these were the 1.75-inch 4088 Type 7 webbing. Type 8 webbing, which had a dotted line running down the center. And again, much smoother webbing originally, but this stuff, it isn't bad. You're not really going to notice the difference. It's just my particular taste for the older stuff. And you can see that there is, you can secure the adjustment with a bit of 100-mile-an-hour tape, as I've done there. And you can just slip the shoulder pads over this to hide it. You could do either or, don't need the 100-mile-an-hour tape, but I prefer it personally. There's nothing to really see on the back. I know a lot of copies of the strike vests, like the one that Eagle Industries makes, the Paul Howe chest rig as they call it, or the low profile chest rig, whatever they call it. they would have a bit of mesh on the back for securing documents or maps and things like that. This doesn't have it. This is before this was really thought of, so AWS is kind of sticking to their original design as much as they can with their modern materials. And AWS still makes these, for the record. I know that they kind of go in and out of stock a lot of the time. You could still buy these for around $125 on AWS, and mostly they stock them in black. They also make them in multicam. They make them in Ranger Green and Coyote Brown. You can find a lot of the Coyote Brown ones on eBay if you wanted to get them for slightly cheaper. But yeah, they're still around. You can still get them. As for the waist strap, again, just basic 1-inch webbing with a tri-glide for adjustment, and you can secure the excess with 100-mile-an-hour tape, and not really much to say about that. On some examples of these, they will have a AWS tag somewhere on the bottom corner, maybe towards the center. I've kind of seen it placed in a lot of different places, but on these current ones, I don't really see them doing that for some reason. They don't put their tags on these anymore. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's just, you know, they don't have enough in stock, or maybe they forget to. It doesn't really matter in the long run. The only other thing to point out about the pouches, which I forgot to mention earlier, are these drain grommets at the bottom here. These are very small grommets. They're not going to get in the way. They're kind of placed further back. And there are actually 2 grommets on these center pouches. There's one on the inside for the main M16/M4 mag pouch that will drain into the pistol pouches, which has another grommet set back further here. So you can't see the other grommet inside, but there's 2 grommets there. For whatever reason, the outer magazine pouches don't have any drain grommets, but the radio pouches do. And that's really all that needs to be said about that. Some of the older ones didn't have any drain grommets at all. Some of them had drain grommets on all of the pouches. It's really kind of a mixed bag, and maybe they kind of do the same variation with their current ones, and you can see some that have all drain grommets, some that have none, and some that do, some that don't, like this one. It's not really important, I guess. You could just tip it upside down and drain the sand and whatever, but you know, it's there if you need it. There's really not much else I could say about this. It's a very, very nice chest rig. It's probably one of my favorite designs. I would say that, honestly, I would prefer one of these if I were to have the choice of this versus like a micro rig or something like that. I'm not really a fan of micro rigs. I know their purpose in that they're sort of a a low profile, lightweight sort of chest rig that carries what you need it to and just the bare essentials. I think this does the job a lot better because you have the advantage of having radios on you as well. I know a lot of dudes currently will just put the radio on the plate carrier themselves, but assume you're not running a plate carrier, assuming you're doing some recon type of shit, you're going to want to have a radio on you, and maybe you're not having a plate carrier on you. You could store the radio on the vest. You could store first aid in this. There's just a little bit more utility that you get out of a strike vest than you do with like a Haley or a Spiritus micro rig of any sort like that. So it's a very antiquated design, yes, but I still think it holds up to this day, and I hope some of you guys appreciate it as well, and maybe you have a more informed opinion about whether or not you want to buy one. So I recommend them. I haven't run them too much. I just kind of analyzed the design in my armchair here, but nevertheless, very good rig, very solid design that still persists to this day. Totally recommend. And that's really all I have to say, so I'll be doing more videos about gear like this from now on, and I'll see you all in the next.